This is Monty Parent with HowToHunt.com. 24 years ago, I started turkey hunting. And all I really needed was somebody to get me started, because I didn't know anything about turkey hunting. And I've had a lot of people that were in the same situation that I was in back then that have asked me for their help. So I'm going to take you through the process that I've taken them through to empower them so they could have a chance at success in the turkey woods. The first thing I do when somebody calls me and asks me how to get started turkey hunting is I ask them what kind of access do they have. Are they in a hunt club, or are they hunting public land, or are they hunting a family farm? What I want to know is, are there turkeys on the land, and how familiar are they with the land? If a person calls me and say, my family farm's starting to get a lot of turkeys on them, I've been on it all my life, I know two things. I know, one, there's birds there because they're starting to see them, and two, I know that they're intimate with the ground. In that case, I start directing them toward brood range. I say, all right, what kind of ground is there on your property where hens could be nesting? Once they've discovered that, then there's a good possibility they can set themselves up in those areas and then do some calling, maybe position themselves in a funnel or a place where they're seeing turkeys, and it makes their calling look pretty good, and they have a good chance of hooking up. If they're not in that situation, let's say that a person calls me and says, well, I'm just hunting public ground. I'd tell them to do the same thing that I would also have told the people that have their own ground that they're intimate with. I'd tell them that sometime about a month before the season starts, because in most states turkeys will start gobbling. Every state in the union, going from south to north, starts a little later. That's because turkeys start doing their things a little later. And what wildlife biologists want to happen is they want most of the hens to be bred before we start taking some of the gobblers out. So in my home state, North Carolina, we typically have a youth week, which is usually starts the first Saturday in April and lasts for that next week. And then the second Saturday of April is the beginning of the full-blown turkey season. By the time that starts happening and people are turned loose on those turkeys, most of them have been bred. About 30 days prior to that, usually around here it's around the middle of March. Okay, I might start hearing turkeys March as early as March 10th or March 15th. By March 20th, if there's turkeys around, there's a good chance they're going to gobble. Now they're not going to gobble for hours most of the time. They're going to gobble for 1 or 2 or 3 or half a dozen times, or whatever it takes to get the first hen to come in. Then they might gobble a couple more times and hush and fly down to be with those hens. But what I want to do is I want to tell people to get out and spend some time on that ground and just position themselves where they might hear birds. All I want them to do is hear them, know they're there. It's information. If they can stay a little longer and get a feel for where they might end up. Let's say that they hear a turkey gobble and it's close to the brood range, and there's what I mean by brood range is brushy field or maybe a wheat field that's grown up and high enough for a turkey to hide in but still build a nest that the sun will hit the ground, so that when the poults come out they're going to have a chance to get dry because the sun might be hitting them. Or it could be a 2-year-old cutover that's growing back and kind of brush at the same situation. Well, if they're roosted in those areas, or it could be a wheat field. Turkeys love to get out in wheat fields in the spring or green fields and peck around and look for bugs and that type of things. The gobblers will strut, and they'll strut the whole time they're with those hens. If they're not breeding, they're strutting. They might do a little feeding late in the day, but most of the time they're going to be strutting and spend time around those hens. That's all information that they're trying to gather, and it starts out with going and position yourself where you can hear them gobble. Once you hear them gobble, you don't want to bother them. You don't want to disturb them. You want to not be intrusive. You want to position yourself so that you can collect information. Where are they gobbling at? Where are they going after they gobble? Are they gobbling later in the day? Do I get in a situation where I can see them? And if you get in that situation, please, please, please make sure they can't see you, because that's valuable information if you don't bump them. I'm not going to say that one time you bump them, the hunt's over, they may never come back to that area, but the least amount of pressure you can put on them, the least amount that you can disturb their normal routine, then they stay in that routine, and now you have an opportunity to take advantage of that. Now, you've heard them, you know there's birds on your property, okay? You've went out and listened to them. Now, let's say that I've been in situations where I just showed up at a place, and I'm going to have to start. I went down to Florida one time and I had one day to scout, and then I started hunting the next day and got a turkey on that first morning. But I spent the whole day positioning myself, walking the ground, looking for sign, looking for scratching, looking for places where birds might be. And then I went out that evening, the night before the opening day of that next morning hunt. I went out the evening before and just listened for birds. I didn't call much. I may have owl called or crow called, but I didn't just bear down on them. I just put myself in a situation where a gobbler, a lot of times when they fly up in the evening, they don't do it every time, but a lot of times when they fly up in the evening, then they'll gobble just to let the hens know where they are. That's good information for me. That's information that I can take and act upon the next morning. I can position myself. Years ago, I had a fellow, I was going down to South Carolina. I had a friend that we actually started turkey hunting the same year. I got a little more serious about it than he did, and I started taking turkeys. He didn't get to go as much as I did, and several years later, he hadn't killed his first turkey. Well, I happened to see him in early March of that same year, and I said, why don't you let me come? They've hunted in South Carolina, and I live in North Carolina. I said, why don't you let me come down to South Carolina and help you kill a turkey this year? Well, I went and hunted with him and his brother. I couldn't get down there till about 10 o'clock the night before they were going to hunt. Opening morning was the next day. But I told them, you know the ground, go out and position yourself that evening so that you know, and see if you can hear a turkey gobbling. Well, one of the two, there's three of them. One of them was going to call for his brother. I was going to call for one guy. And so all three of those people were already there, and they went out and positioned themselves in different places away from each other so they had a better chance to reach out with their ears and hear the birds. Once I called them on my cell phone all the way down there and said, well, did you hear anything? They said, yeah, we heard one bird. I said, tell me what's around that bird. And they said, well, he's not far from a food plot. I said, all right, here's what you need to do. Tomorrow morning, you need to go in early in the dark. I said, can you get to that food plot safely in the dark? They said, yeah, we know it like the back of our hand. So I got there about 10 o'clock. They stayed in a little camper on their hunt club, and they were just going to bed when I got there. And we had a little discussion about what to do tomorrow. And they had the clock set for what I knew was 30 minutes too late. They listened to me, and I said, let's set the clock for 30 minutes earlier and use that darkness to getting to that food plot so that you can call that bird. And I said, once you get in there in the morning, if he gobbles, then all you got to do is take your hat and shake it and do a little fly down and maybe cluck a little bit. And if you get an answer to that, hush. Well, they took a turkey the next day. You know why they took the turkey? Because they knew the ground, they knew where the bird was the night before, and they positioned themselves to be in its way. They positioned themselves. All they had to do was to use the call to facilitate things a little bit. I, on the other hand, took his brother out. We didn't have that luxury. We didn't know where a gobbling bird was. We went to one piece of ground. I'd never seen this place before, never been on it before in my life, okay? When the lights came on, we went to one spot and I didn't hear anything. We waited what I thought was long enough. I said, let's go somewhere else. He said, well, let's go. We went up the road, and as we're going to the place he's telling me about, I'm asking him to describe it to me. We got out, stood on the side of the road, heard a turkey gobble. I said, all right, tell me about the ground right here. He said, well, right beside us here is a 1-year-old cutover as we walk in, and that turkey's down on a creek bottom. And I said, how does that creek bottom run? He said it runs from big woods where the bird is and runs straight out perpendicularly into that cutover. I said, we're going to go down there and get on that creek bottom. We got on that creek bottom. I let that turkey gobble and gobble and gobble and gobble. Once I felt like for sure that the bird was on the ground, I started calling a little bit, little yelps, and the bird came in. As it got close to us, it started skirting us about 60 yards and went up a steep bluff, and it was leaving. So I started doing a fighting purr, turn that bird, it would gobble and walk 2 steps closer. And then it would stop. It would gobble and walk 2 steps closer. Then it would stop. And I'd do another fighting purr and it would gobble and come 2 steps closer. But my point is that these folks knew the ground, and I knew what turkeys might do. I knew that turkeys were apt to walk down that creek bottom because I've seen lots of sign and I've seen lots of turkeys use creek bottoms to scratch around and get the thing and do the things they want to do in the springtime. Okay, I became the hen that he wanted to court, and he came close enough. Then I challenged him a little bit, and he came close enough in there for us to take him. Now, talked about a couple scenarios here. One is we know there's birds on the ground. We're intimate with it. Another situation is they knew there was birds in the area. I didn't know the ground, but I knew what turkeys do. And if you learn what turkeys will do in the springtime, then the more familiar you are with the ground, the better off you are. But if you know what turkeys are apt to do, then you can still position yourself where you have a good chance of winning. listen, you need to learn how to call. I'm going to put a link on the back of this video so that you can, I've got a video on calling that could be empowering to you. But let me just tell you this, calling is not all the game. Some of the worst callers I know are some of the best turkey hunters I know, because they don't necessarily depend on your call. And I don't believe you can depend on your call. A lot of people, the particular folks that are starting out, think that when you call a turkey, they got to come. That's not the case. In fact, if you talk about tactics, when people hear about something, they think, oh, it's supposed to, in their mind, I did it. They thought, oh, that's going to work every time. Well, here's what happens in hunting. It doesn't work every time. If you get a tactic that works 1 out of 10 times, it's a good tactic. 1 out of 10 times you go, or 1 out of 10 times you set up, it's a good tactic. If it works 2 out of 10 times, it's a great tactic. If it works 3 out of 10 times, it's a phenomenal tactic. So, get familiar with the birds, get familiar with the ground. If you don't, go early in the season, try to find out where they are, trying to find out what they want to do. Learn to call. I've got another video on decoying. I don't use a decoy in the woods that much. If I'm going to be in the dense woods, big forest, whatever, I might throw a decoy up, because I do a lot of walking and calling. That's the other thing I do. When I first start out in the morning, I usually try to set up in a likely place. If a bird doesn't come to me or I don't hook up, then I become mobile. I want to walk and call, walk and call, walk and call, walk and call. You'd be amazed at how much, if you cover some ground, how many times you're going to have a good possibility of a bird hearing you, and once you get an answer, you might have a chance of hooking up. Learn the birds, learn the ground, get in their way, use the calling and some decoying to facilitate that. There'll also be a link on the back of this video on some decoying tactics. I hope this helps. I hope this gets you started. This is Monty Parent with HowToHunt.com. Get after it.